Hi Angelo, how are you?
Hey Akash, great to meet you.
All right, perfect. Let me start with a quick disclaimer that whatever we discuss, these are your personal views. You are not representing any organization in any way. So, my first question is to actually just have address the problem of why leaders trust AI for business strategy. I'll mention the article that you wrote, your HBR piece that coins the term Trendslop to describe how LLMs default to fashionable managerial buzzwords, right? So, why are executives so easily fooled into thinking an AI is giving them unbiased outside strategic advice when it actually just pattern match? It's just making the patterns get matched.
Great. So I think we can begin bit by just like the UI, right, or the form of the AI. Just
Yeah.
because like it's on the screen, it's not a person. There's no avatar there. Like it feels very objective. It
Mhm.
feels like it gives you like non-emotional, very rational kind of advice. Right? Compared to, for instance, asking a consultant or asking another manager, it feels like if you're asking the AI system, which doesn't know about you, which doesn't have any stakes, that doesn't have any salary, etc. Like it
Mhm.
feels like it can give you then an advice with no strings attached, right? They just ask it, and it will not ask you for a pay raise or for some other. It will not demand anything like to give you any advice. And I think that's probably the main reason why it's so easy for anyone to just access the LLMs for any advice. But the
Mhm.
problem is the when you start advising it, because of like whatever context you put in there, it can sound like very polished, it can sound like very personalized, it can use different jargons, especially that it has access to like training data and probably like, if it's trained in conferences, in books around your field, then it has access to the jargons that are typically used in your field, and so it might sound much more smarter then. And so it's true then that because of the presentation that it has and because of this like how's it personified kind of aspect of it, it becomes easy to trust the recommendations that are put out there by the LLMs.
Got it. And you might have noticed that things like viral LinkedIn post or any newsletter or heavily edited TED Talks intentionally strip out real world trade offs and finite budgets to leave audiences feeling inspired. Uh, how dangerous is it when an AI learns business logic from platforms where the incentive structure rewards hope over hard physics?
And that's a wonderful question. Yeah, the first thing that came to my mind when you were asking that is that like one option you can do already. So starting already with a solution is like you can, for instance, ask ChatGPT to also cite like what important works in strategy, or you can explicitly like attach it as a file, no,
Mhm.
like previous papers published in management. But I
Right.
think like even if you do this, this is probably also still gonna give you an illusion of like rigor, an illusion that it's actually like deciding the best for you based on the context that you have. So I think it's not really just about like the material that it's trained on per se. So it's not really just because all everything like if you go in the internet out there, it's all about like blog posts saying that you should differentiate yourself, or social media posts that say that trying to find your specific niche would be the best for you, right? I mean,
Mhm.
that's one part of the problem, but it's also, I think, the more than that, beyond that, even I think if you provide it with like the correct kind of context or framework to anchor its thinking on, it's not really 100% guarantee that it will be able to cater its recommendations to your specific niche. Because like if you think about it, when you make a decision, it's not really just about all those explicit things out there where you make your decisions in. There's a lot of like intuition and like tacit knowledge that you also put there. So for instance, I don't know, like for instance, if you talk with a colleague and then your
Mhm.
colleague gives you some kind of small of information that might be important for the decision that you're making. No? These are things that the AI doesn't have access to, but you as a
Right.
manager, like you're the one who knows it more. So I think, yeah, while it can give you some ideas, it's still not probably the gonna be the best decision, best recommendation for your specific needs.
Got it. Yeah, makes sense. My next set of questions are on the exact data. I mean, the seven tensions and the hybrid trap. You ran a massive simulation testing seven leading LLMs across 1,500 scenarios involving classic strategic tensions like exploration versus exploitation or automation versus augmentation. So my question on this is, why did the models overwhelmingly cluster toward the socially desirable side instead of evaluating the specific company context?
Right. So I think it's two things. No, one is that again, like we already mentioned before, they are trained on what's already out there, and
Hmm.
what's already out there is typically like it should sound sexy. It's I mean, for it to find an object audience and to be published in the first place, it needs
Yeah,
to be trendy. It needs to be aligned with what's the vibe out there. So I think that's the first thing. No, that they're trained on internet data, and so a lot of the discourse out there trend towards those sexier, like more empowering things, right? Like if you talk about commoditization, for instance, and that's I think what we found in the paper that yeah, if you make it decide between different trend, the commoditization, it seems to not really like um, recommending commoditization just because I think like yeah, it sounds disempowering. It sounds like it's the boring thing, no? So because the word commoditization too, I think even if like you're not even talking about it in the business context, like if you're thinking about it outside the business context, like commoditization has a lot of negative connotations to it. So I think yeah, it's if the LLMs that are trained on these kinds of data, which tend to view some kinds of some sets of words negatively, then it will just be a natural like outcome then when you try to ask them for advice. That's first part. And I think the second part though is we don't know how much training happens no after the post training, no, like the how much tuning is done by humans. But I
mhm,
imagine then that like if humans have to decide no which uh, uh, which two outcomes, for instance, and they have like I imagine after you train the model like with data out there, it is still
yeah,
tuned with humans, and these humans have to decide between different options which option is better. And I think there's also this general bias, I think, with humans in general to pick the sexier version, no? Like the uh, trying to differentiate yourself or trying to go with long-term thinking, for instance. These are things that I think are just natural for us humans to also prefer. And so if you're given then two different options and you have to recommend to the LLM which is the better option, then I
mhm.
think the people who are training these AI systems probably also have the same kinds of biases. So to summarize, then I think it's two things: the training data and then the later tuning by humans that I think affect then the LLM's recommendations.
Got it. Okay. And one of your most striking findings is that when LLMs aren't forced into a binary choice, they recommend both and hybrids. Strategy scholars call this the dangerous stuck in the middle trap, right? So, why does the AI instinctively try to please everyone? What happens to a company that tries to execute a hybrid strategy?
It was actually my co-author Natalia who first characterized it, and it was because like her students, when they get access to AI, they always tend to recommend this hybrid approach. I
Mhm.
don't really know what's the main answer for this, but my intuition or my guess is that it's the same as before. It's because of humans trying to tune the models after it has been trained, right? And typically, I think like probably the instructions to these people who are tuning the system is that we don't want to offend anybody. We don't want you to hurt anybody, to make some difficult trade-offs. And I think that's kind of contrary to what you ask or what you are asked to do when you have to strategize, right? Because you have to offend people, you have to make some trade-offs, you have to think about like the different risks, the different people who will be affected by your different decisions. And I think because probably the AI systems are trained so that like they try to be as benevolent or to offend the least amount of of people possible, then that's why they tend to have this hybrid or yeah compromise approach.
Got it. And have you seen any results, or have you uh, have seen any case studies around when the companies actually decided to go with the hybrid strategy and it didn't work for them?
Good question. I mean, in strategy, there's really big literature on organizational ambidexterity. So that's the idea then that you can explore and exploit at the same time, right? Because like if you're a company, let's say like Google, you need to
Yeah.
take care of your core business like the Google search. But at the same time, if there's a new disruption out there, in this case like AI, then you should
Yeah.
be able to explore it. So at least in this case, it's well characterized that you can explore and exploit at the same time. However, there are probably like certain tensions out there wherein it probably makes less sense. So, for instance, centralization versus decentralization, and also commoditization versus differentiation. No, because like in these kinds of things, like you might divide your efforts or your attention so much that it becomes then difficult to become successful then because you're not like committing to something, then your resources are divided and then you might fail then, right? Because like if you think about it, like just look at different products, no,
Mhm.
it's not very common for a company like let's say like Walmart or Amazon, right, to have also very like luxury or high like very specific kinds of products because like for these
Yeah.
kinds of businesses it will make more sense for them to just go with one approach versus like being in the middle. So to summarize that, like for some sessions it's okay for and it's even common for a hybrid approach to happen, but for some
Mhm.
other approaches it's probably for some other tensions it is much more like weird to have like this thing in the middle happening.
Correct. Yeah. Uh, Many engineers, I feel, they think that better prompting or adding more context can fix model bias. But your study showed that changing the framing or adding context barely moved the needle. So why is this bias so deeply baked into the weights of the models?
Yeah, I think just to correct a bit, when we added more context, they tended to move more towards the middle.
Oh,
But
okay.
the thing is, they still were towards the option that they were already biased towards. No? So
Mhm.
by adding more context, we can shift it a little bit, but it's not like it's totally now, 50-50. It will decide to be less biased and to be more balanced in its decision making. Yeah, so I think this is still a very open question, like
Yeah,
whether if you add more context, it will really like it will solve this problem of Trendslop that we identified. But I think it's just very complex in general, no? Because like you like measuring what's really a good decision in the end, I think that's really difficult to do anyway. So maybe like a future study could be something like that, no? To understand, to really have like a dependent variable of like when is it okay for it to like when are the recommendations of the LLMs actually good for people's strategy in there?
makes sense. Yeah. My next question, I mean, it's not exactly directly related to the paper, but since you have worked on it, I wanted to ask you your initial thoughts on this. Let's assume it's kind of a direct advice that I'm asking for practitioners building corporate tools. So, if an enterprise engineer is building an internal AI tool for executives today, how do they counteract the model's natural propensity to deliver Trendslop?
Yeah, that's just really a wonderful question as well. Like since publishing our paper, a lot of companies have reached out to us because they have these kinds of initiatives to create like chatbots that will take, internal, external data and help their
Mhm,
executives decide. And honestly, like it's still very early. At least I cannot really give like recommendations or guidelines on how they should create these kinds of bots. From
mhm,
the engineering side, I can think more from the like managerial side, like how should they like take the advice of the LLMs, like how should they interpret or analyze that. No? So
mhm.
at least from the manager side, I think there's a lot more training that's needed. And I think like the most important is like before asking LLMs for its advice, like you should really make your own decisions first, because otherwise, once you start getting advice from them, like you can already anchor your thinking towards
Exactly.
like AI, and it's difficult already to go back to your state before you were anchored by the AI. Um, and so I think we also said it's in the paper, like if you're gonna really use AI, then like if you really needed to help you form your opinion, in the end, like you should really still be the person deciding, like it can give you the different options, but you should still like be the one deciding in the end. No, and maybe from the engineering side, then like if you will force me to name anything that they should probably do, I probably having some kinds of like cautions or some kind of warnings there to make sure that their managers know that like you shouldn't 100% rely on the decisions, recommendations of the AI might be the one of the best practices. But yeah, this is something I think that I and my team still need to further think about. No, like how do you actually design a good chatbot? And maybe just another anecdote to add before I end this my answer here is that like
Yeah.
we already have some partnerships with other companies where we're testing their chatbots, because like one thing you can do, for instance, no, is like uh, make the system prompt so that like the LLMs will never give an answer. But
Mhm.
then, like if you do something like that, the managers might actually end up not using your LLM at all, because people want like decisions. So they don't want somebody that will just say, no, I cannot make this decision for you. So further studies then are needed to understand, like if you solve these Trendslop problems, like for instance, by not permitting AI from making decisions, maybe people or managers will not make decisions at all, or like, I mean, no, I didn't mean to say. I mean, maybe they will not use the AI at all, and then the AI's utility then will be lessened. Also, there are many different levers then that companies have to think about when they're deciding the design of an AI system.
And how does we like according to you, what does a safe human in the loop workflow look like when using an LLM for strategic planning?
Great. So, as I mentioned again, one is like before asking LLM for any advice, maybe try to formulate already your own opinions and write it somewhere.
Right.
And then if you're gonna use an LLM then for decision making, then I just ask it to collect first all the different data, and then don't ask it to make any interpretations at all. Just like use it as a kind of an advanced Google search.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
then at the later stage, if you need it, for instance, to synthesize many different data, then uh, probably, I mean, that's one of their biggest uses, no? Like to analyze and to make sense of like different data points. Then again, don't make them come up with recommendations or conclusions, no? Like just try
Yeah.
to them just present everything to you, but without any conclusions at all. And then if you're gonna ask them then to tell you different options, then that's fine probably, no? But again, make sure that like the options that are presented to you are not already biased like from the beginning. So if you see, for instance, already bias happening out there, then you should ask the LLMs to argue more for like the options that it says are not the best options. No. And then finally, if you have to make a decision out of it, out of like the different options that you have, I would say do not really ask the LLMs for advice because they're known to have sycophantic behaviors, right? And they will just like agree on whatever you say that you're
Right.
already preparing. So just count that as like just don't do that in the end, and just like really rely on your own like cognition if you have to make the decisions. So to summarize, then yeah, humans should really think about like what their role here, and then like really set the boundaries, and let judgment and the final decision should always be up to them.
Got it. My last set of questions. There is a powerful counter thesis gaining traction that modern LLMs produce Trendslop because they are trained on internet sewage, post 1970 data from Reddit and Wikipedia. So, do you agree that modern internet data is inherently broken for high level reasoning because it rewards groupthink?
Can you repeat this one? Yeah, this one's a bit more
Let
complicated.
me let me try to rephrase that. I mean, I feel is do you think the modern internet just is too full of popularity contests like upvote chasing and online groupthink to ever train a truly smart AI?
That's a wonderful question. I don't have like any insight into that. Because I mean, there's always this question of whether AI is just the average of the internet,
Mhm,
or whether there's some kind of emergence happening, such that like if you feed it as much as data as you can, that there's some magic happening out there that like the original data set cannot does not contain, right?
mhm,
So in this case, then I don't really know. I feel like there's also like apart from like a lot of companies trying to ask people to create more high quality data, there's also a lot of um, work in trying to tune them further. So maybe, just tuning them might work already and be enough to counteract it. And I think in the end, it's probably the users who have to fight against whatever kinds of biases that are in the data that the LLM has been trained on, right? If they use like good prompting practices, and then they also use system prompts that try to counteract against like the potential biases that they might think. And then
mhm.
again, as I mentioned many times, like if they're the ones who make the decisions in the end, then probably these biases of the LLMs would be counteracted. But then I'm also thinking of the counterfactual, no? Like, what if the LLMs are trained on like really high quality data? Let's say all these case studies of companies like that have been successful, no? And then all the companies that have failed and like why they failed, etc. Will that
Mhm.
make a better LLM? At least for strategy, I don't feel like it really matters too much. No? Like, because again, the users are the one who have to decide. So probably even if like there are differences in terms of like its preference, etc. If managers are trained to not just rely on the LLM's advice, then probably it's not a big deal if like what kind of data it has been trained.
Right. Uh, my last question is let's think about pre 1970 corporate data,
Mhm.
where words cost real money to print. Authors wrote under real names, and writing valued hard physical constraints and falsifiability over vague synergy, right? So if we shifted training corpuses away from modern web scraping and towards historical first principles archives, would Trendslop disappear, according to you?
Question again, I don't know the answer, so I can just like speculate at this point. I have a
Yeah.
feeling already that companies are doing a lot of this, right? And they're weighing
Mm,
the different posts out there so that this high quality data, such as journal articles or these books that are published like way before,
yeah.
are weighed much more than some random internet post out there. And I mean, you can already see that because at least one of the big hypotheses why these M dashes are very common AI responses is because of like
Yeah.
this training from the older books. So so I think the like whatever training data that you use, whether that's like old data or new data, there will still be some kinds of biases there. But the only thing is like these biases will be different, right? So
Hmm.
if the current bias now is about differentiation, I don't know what kinds of things were in the air when these kinds of books were published, but I would imagine that the AI will just also incorporate the kinds of biases or leaning preferences that they had at this
Hmm.
previous point in time. So I think that's the cool thing about these kinds of study, like in this field, because I think whatever AI is out there, whatever training data it has been that has been used for it, and whatever tuning has been done for it, there will always be some kind of bias, because I mean that it has to have some kind of preference in the end, right? And so like researchers, managers then have this like really critical role of understanding like what kinds of preferences like they might be steered towards when they use these different kinds of systems.
Got it. Makes sense. Yeah. I mean, these were my questions. Thank you so much, Angelo, for all of those.
But yeah, it's really cool. Like all the questions you asked are really like well thought of, and and really made me a lot of things also to think about. There are a lot of things that I haven't really thought of, like since the paper got
Yeah.
published. So thanks also for your insights.
That
Uh,
was exactly what I was looking for, honestly. You might have also, gotten into different perspective after the research paper that you published.
yes.
So, and you made all the complex logic very accessible, I'll be honest here. So, thank you so much for giving your time and giving such great answers.